When the lights go out, it wakes up. Chapter 1. The blackout. Begins Caleb sprawled across his couch, the TV flickering with a late-night cooking show, some chef chopping onions in a whirl of knives. His apartment was a cozy mess. Blankets piled. High, a half-empty popcorn bowl on the coffee table, rain tapping the windows. It was a quiet Thursday, the kind where he'd doze off to the drone of recipes. Then, pop. The TV went black, the lights blinked out, and silence swallowed the room. Great, Caleb muttered, fumbling for his phone. No signal, just a dim glow. The rain outside picked up, a steady drum against the glass, but inside, the stillness felt wrong, too thick, too heavy. He stood, shuffling toward the kitchen for a flashlight, when a sound stopped him. A soft thump, like a barefoot step on hardwood. He froze, ears straining. Nothing. Just the building settling, he told himself, but his pulse ticked up. In the kitchen, he grabbed a flashlight from the drawer. Dead batteries. Of course, he groaned, then remembered his old camera, a clunky thing with night vision he'd bought for a camping trip years back. It was in the hall closet, buried under coats. Another thump, closer, by the couch. Caleb spun, phone, light sweeping the room, empty, shadows pooling in corners. He dug out the camera, flipping it on. The green-tinted screen hummed to life, casting the living room in eerie monochrome. Couch, table, TV, all normal. Then he panned left, and his breath caught. In the corner by the bookshelf, a dark shape stood, tall, vague, hunched slightly, like a shadow stretched too thin. No face, no details, just a smudge against the wall. Caleb blinked, lowering the camera. Nothing there in the dark. Back to the screen. It stood, unmoving. What the? He whispered, heart thudding. The rain pounded harder, a distant rumble of thunder rolling in, but that thump came again, behind him now, soft and deliberate. He whipped the camera around, empty hallway, just his coat rack. Back to the corner. The figure was gone. He stood, frozen, the camera's green glow his only anchor. Power outage prank, he muttered, forcing a laugh. But the silence pressed in, alive with something he couldn't see. Yet. Chapter 2. The sound in the silence. Caleb gripped the camera, its night vision screen trembling in his hands as he scanned the living room again. The green tint painted everything in a ghostly haze. Couch, popcorn bowl, TV, all still, all normal. But the corner by the bookshelf was empty now. The dark figure vanished. He lowered the camera, squinting into the blackout's gloom. Nothing, but shadows and the rain's steady beat outside. Imagination, he said aloud, voice shaky, trying to convince himself. Then it came again. Thump, thump. Soft, rhythmic, like steps circling the room. He swung the camera up, panning fast. Hallway clear, kitchen doorway empty. Back to the living room. The figure stood by the TV now, closer, its vague shape sharper, arms dangling limp. No eyes, no mouth, just a tall smear of black against the green glow. Caleb's breath hitched. He dropped the camera to his chest. Darkness, no figure. Back up, it was there. Head tilted slightly, like it was listening. Who's there? He called, voice cracking. The rain answered, a low rumble, of thunder, but no reply. Just a faint hiss, like breathing, right behind his neck. He spun, camera flailing, empty space, the couch looming in the green screen. His heart raced, sweat prickling his skin. This isn't funny, he muttered, backing toward the kitchen, camera trained ahead. The thump-thump followed. Slow, deliberate, from the living room's far side. He panned. The figure stood by the window now, taller, its edges crisper, one arm raised faintly, like reaching. Caleb stumbled, knocking the popcorn bowl. Kernels scattered, crunching underfoot, loud in the silence. He froze, camera steady. The figure's head jerked toward him, sharp and sudden. Okay, he whispered, edging to the kitchen. The flashlight was useless, but candles. He had some in a drawer. He fumbled, camera in one hand, digging with the other. Matches, wax, something to fight the dark. A hiss again, closer, by the doorway. He swung the camera. The figure loomed there, blocking the kitchen's edge, its form solid now, shoulders broad, head tilted down. Caleb lit a candle, its flicker weak against the blackout, and raised the camera, still there, unmoving, watching. The flame danced, but the dark held its secrets tighter. Chapter 3. The dark closes. In Caleb's candle flickered, a tiny orange glow barely cutting the blackout's grip on his apartment. The camera hung from his neck, its night vision screen a lifeline as he clutched the matchbox, flame trembling in his hand. The figure stood in the kitchen doorway. Tall, dark, its edges sharp in the green tint, head tilted like it studied him. He'd seen it move. Corner, TV, window, now here. Each step closer, each moment bolder. The thump-thump had stopped, but that hiss, soft, rhythmic breathing, hovered behind him. He swung the camera. The figure held its ground, one arm raised, fingers long and thin, reaching faintly toward the candle. "Get back!" Caleb yelled, voice echoing, but it didn't flinch. He lowered the camera. Darkness swallowed it, the candle's light too weak to reveal anything. Back to the screen. It loomed, closer now, just past the counter, its form solidifying, shoulders hunched. No face yet, just a void where one should be. The rain pounded outside, thunder rumbling, but inside, the silence thickened, broken only by that hiss. Now to his left. He spun, candle flaring. The kitchen was empty, just cabinets and shadows. Camera up. The figure stood by the fridge, inches closer, its head jerking toward him again, like it sensed the light. "What do you want?" he demanded, stepping back. His heel crunched popcorn, the sound jarring. He lit another candle, setting it on the counter. 2 flames now, their glow pushing the dark back a fraction. The thump-thump returned, slow, circling, from the living room. He tracked it with the camera. Nothing. Then there, by the couch again. Taller, its arms stretching longer, fingers curling. The hiss came from his right. He whipped around, camera shaking. The figure was back in the kitchen, by the sink, closer still, its void face tilting down, almost curious. Caleb's chest tightened. "You're not real," he muttered. But the camera said otherwise, each frame tighter, each glimpse bolder. He grabbed a third candle, lighting it fast, the trio flickering bravely. The hiss brushed his ear. He spun, candle in hand. The figure loomed by the counter, inches away, its dark form swallowing the green glow, waiting for the light to fail. Chapter 4. The shadows move. Faster. Caleb's apartment trembled under the weight of the blackout, the 3 candles on the kitchen counter casting frail, flickering light, barely enough to push back the dark pressing in from every corner. The camera hung heavy around his neck, its night vision screen a shaky window, to the green-tinted nightmare unfolding. The figure loomed by the counter, inches from him, its tall, dark form sharp in the glow. Broad shoulders, long arms, a void where its face should be. The hiss of its breath brushed his ear, cold and close, and he stumbled back, knocking a candle. It wobbled but held, flame dancing wildly. "Stay away." Caleb shouted, voice cracking, swinging the camera up. The figure jerked its head toward him, its arms stretching, fingers curling like claws in the green haze. He lowered it. Darkness swallowed the space, the candlelight too weak to catch it. Back to the screen. It was gone. He panned fast. Living room, hallway, kitchen. Nothing, just shadows and silence. Then a thump-thump. Quick, purposeful from the hallway. He edged forward, clutching a candle, its wax dripping hot on his hand. The hiss returned, behind him now, sharp and insistent. He spun, camera flailing. The figure stood by the fridge. Again, closer, its void face tilting down, one hand reaching toward the flame. "No, you don't," he muttered, thrusting the candle out. It flinched, just a flicker, retreating an inch. The thump-thump came again, faster, circling by the couch. Caleb tracked it, camera up, green screen trembling. The figure was there, by the TV, taller now, its edges crisper, arms dangling, head cocked sharply. He swung the candle. No change, in the dark. But the screen showed it jerk toward him, quick as a blink. The hiss hit his neck. He whipped around, candle flaring. The kitchen empty, but the camera caught it. Back by the counter, inches from where he'd stood, its long fingers twitching. Heart pounding, he grabbed the matchbox. 2 candles left, in the pack. He lit one, setting it by the sink, 4 flames now flickering defiantly. The thump-thump sped up. Hallway, living room, kitchen. A frantic loop. He panned. The figure flashed by the window, then the couch, then the fridge. Moving, too fast, too close, its void face locking on him each time. The dark was shrinking, but so was his space, the shadows chasing the light's edge. Chapter 5. The breath on his neck, Caleb's kitchen glowed with 4 candles, their tiny flames a fragile fortress against the blackout's grip, wax pooling on the counter as the rain hammered outside. The camera's night vision screen shook in his hands, the green tint revealing the figure's relentless dance. Window, couch, fridge, each flicker closer, faster, its tall form sharpening with every frame. The thump-thump of its steps rattled, the floor, a rhythm he couldn't predict, and the hiss of its breath, sharp, wet, brushed his neck, his ear, his cheek, always behind him no matter where he turned. "Leave me alone," he yelled, voice echoing, swinging the camera. The figure stood by the sink, inches from a candle, its void face tilting, long fingers hovering over the flame. He thrust the light forward. It flinched, retreating a step. But the hiss came again, from the living room. He spun, camera sweeping. The figure loomed by the TV, head cocked, arms stretching toward him across the room. "How?" he gasped, backing into the counter. Candle wax burned his hand, but he barely felt it. He panned. The figure flashed to the couch, then the hallway, then back to the kitchen. By the fridge now, its form solid, shoulders broad, fingers curling tighter. The thump-thump circled, hallway, living room, a frantic chase he couldn't follow. "You're not real," he muttered. But the camera begged to differ. Each glimpse nearer, its void face locking on him, unblinking, unseen eyes drilling through the dark. Caleb grabbed the last candle, striking a match. 5 flames now, their glow merging, pushing the shadows back a breath. The hiss hit his ear. He whipped around, candle high. The figure stood by the counter, inches away, its arm raised, fingers brushing the air near his face. He swung the light. It recoiled, but the thump-thump resumed, faster from the hallway. Camera up. It was there, by the closet, then gone, then back by the sink. Too quick, too bold. His chest heaved, sweat dripping. The candles flickered, wax dripping faster, and the hiss grew, layered now, like multiple breaths overlapping, circling him in the shrinking light. The figure flashed. Couch, TV, fridge. Each moved tighter, its dark form a trap closing in as the blackout stretched on. Chapter 6. The light starts to fail. Caleb's apartment was a battlefield of flickering light. 5 candles burned on the eye. Kitchen counter, their flames trembling as wax spilled over the edge, pooling in hot streaks. The camera's night vision screen glowed green, his only window to the figure stalking the dark. Its tall, sharp form flashing from couch to fridge, to hallway, each step closer, each thump-thump a hammer on his nerves. The hiss, wet, insistent, rolled around him, behind, beside, a breath he couldn't escape, and the rain outside roared, thunder shaking the walls, drowning his gasps. He held a candle high, its flame his shield, and panned the camera. The figure stood by the sink, inches from the light, its void face tilting down, long fingers stretching toward him, curling like they could snag his shadow. "Back off!" he shouted, thrusting the candle. It flinched, retreating a step, but the hiss hit his neck. He spun, camera shaking. The figure loomed by the fridge, head cocked, arm raised again. "You're everywhere," he whispered, voice breaking, sweat stinging his eyes. The thump-thump sped up, hallway couch, a relentless loop. He tracked it, camera up. The figure flashed by the TV, then the window, its form solid now, edges crisp, fingers longer, reaching. A candle sputtered, wax choking the wick. It dimmed, and the hiss surged, closer, layered, a chorus of breaths. He swung the camera. The figure was by the counter, inches from him, its void face tilting sharply, fingers brushing the air near his throat. Caleb relit the candle, hands trembling. 5 flames again, but weaker, their glow shrinking. The thump-thump circled, kitchen, living room, faster, tighter. He panned, the figure darted, couch, fridge, hallway. Its movements a blur, its dark shape filling the screen each time. The hiss pressed in, his ear, his cheek, cold, alive. He spun, candle flaring. The figure stood by the sink again. Closer, its arm stretching, fingers grazing the camera's lens in the green glow. 1 candle flickered out, 4 left, the dark clawing closer. The thump-thump pounded, the hiss roared, and Caleb's light wavered, the figure's shadow growing as the blackout tightened its hold. Chapter 7. The Flicker of Hope. Fades, Caleb's kitchen trembled under the blackout's weight. 4 candles, flickering on the counter, their flames weak, wax pooling in desperate streaks as the 5th lay snuffed out, a casualty of the dark. The camera's night vision screen glowed green in his shaking hands, revealing the figure's relentless dance. Couch, fridge, hallway, each thump-thump a jolt to his fraying nerves, each flash closer, its tall form sharper, fingers longer, void face locking on him. The hiss of its breath swirled, behind his neck beside his ear, cold, wet, a constant shadow he couldn't shake. Rain lashed the windows, thunder rumbling, but the apartment's silence roared louder. "Stay back!" Caleb yelled, thrusting a candle forward. Its flames sputtered, casting jittery shadows, but the figure stood by the sink, inches away, its arm raised, fingers curling toward the light in the green glow. He swung the camera, its head jerked, tilting sharply, the hiss spiking as it lunged an inch closer. He dropped the screen. Darkness swallowed it, the candlelight too dim to pierce the gloom. Up again. It flashed to the fridge, then the couch, its movements a blur, too fast to track. The thump-thump circled. Hallway, living room, a tightening noose. Caleb grabbed the matchbox, empty, the last candle lit, no reserves left. No, he muttered, panic rising, panning the camera. The figure loomed by the TV, head cocked, arms stretching across the room, fingers brushing the air near his chest. The hiss hit his cheek. He spun, candle flaring. Nothing there but the screen showed it. By the counter again, inches from his elbow, its void face tilting down, almost curious. Another candle flickered, wax choking it. It dimmed, and the thump thump surged, footsteps overlapping, a frantic chase. He relit it fast, 4 flames holding, barely. But the hiss grew, layered now, breaths stacking from every angle. Camera up. The figure darted. Couch, hallway, sink. Its long fingers grazed the lens, smudging the green glow. "You're not taking me," he gasped. But the dark pressed closer, the light's edge shrinking, the figure's shadow a tide he couldn't outrun. Chapter 8. The dark takes. Shape Caleb's apartment was a shrinking island of light. 4 candles burned on the counter, their flames faltering, wax dripping in hot rivers as the blackout tightened its grip. The camera's night vision screen trembled in his hands, the green tint a shaky lifeline to the figure stalking him. Its tall, dark form flashing from couch to fridge to hallway. Each thump-thump a hammer on the floor, each glimpse bolder. Its void face sharper, fingers stretching longer. The hiss rolled around him, his neck, his ears, his face. A cold, layered breath that wouldn't relent, matched by the rain's roar outside, thunder shaking the walls. "Get out!" he shouted, voice raw, swinging a candle. The flame flared, casting wild shadows. But the figure stood by the sink, inches away, its arm raised, long fingers curling toward him in the green glow. He panned the camera. It jerked its head, lunging. Closer. The hiss spiking like a hiss of static. He dropped the screen. Darkness hid it. Candlelight useless against the gloom. Up again. It flashed to the couch, then the fridge. Its form solid now, shoulders broad, head tilting with intent. The thump-thump pounded. Hallway, living room. A relentless circle closing in. Caleb's hand shook, wax burning his skin. He barely felt it, eyes locked on the screen. The figure darted. TV, window, its fingers brushed the lens, leaving a streak. The hiss hit his cheek. He spun, candle high. Nothing there, but the screen showed it. By the counter, inches from his side, its void face forming, hollow sockets hinting, a jagged line where a mouth might be. A candle sputtered out. 3. Left, the dark surging forward. "No!" he yelled, relighting it. 4 again, but weaker, their glow fading fast. The thump-thump overlapped. Kitchen, couch. Too quick, too many. Camera up. The figure flashed. Hallway, sink, its fingers. Grazed his arm in the green, cold and real. The hiss roared. A chorus now, pressing from all sides. Caleb's knees buckled, the light wavering. The figure's shape growing as the blackout swallowed his defenses. Chapter 9. The edge of the light. Caleb's kitchen was a battlefield of fading hope. 4 candles flickered on the counter, there, flames gasping, wax pooling in frantic streams as the blackout's darkness clawed closer. The camera's night vision screen shook in his grip, its green glow revealing the figure's relentless hunt. Couch, fridge, hallway, each thump-thump a jolt through the floor, each flash tighter, its tall form crisp, fingers long and sharp, void face taking shape with hollow eyes and a jagged mouth. The hiss, cold, wet, layered, swirled around him, brushing his neck, his ears, his face, a breath he couldn't outrun, drowning the rain's roar outside. "Stop it," he yelled, voice breaking, thrusting a candle. The flame sputtered, shadows, dancing. But the figure loomed by the sink, inches away, its arms stretching, fingers curling toward his throat in the green glow. He swung the camera, its head jerked, the hiss spiking, lunging closer, its jagged mouth parting faintly. He dropped the screen. Darkness hid it, candlelight too weak to fight. Up again. It flashed to the fridge, then the couch, its form towering, head tilting sharply, fingers reaching across the room. The thump-thump hammered. Hallway, living room, a frantic spiral. Caleb's chest heaved, sweat dripping. He panned. The figure darted. TV, window, sink. Its fingers brushed his shoulder, cold and electric in the green. The hiss roared, behind, beside, a chorus trapping him. A candle died, 3 left, the dark surging in. No, he gasped, relighting it. 4 again, but dim, their glow shrinking. He spun, candle high. The figure flashed, couch, hallway, its movements a blur, its void face locking on him, hollow eyes glinting, mouth wider. The thump-thump overlapped. Kitchen, living room. Too fast, too close. Camera up. It stood by the counter, inches away, its fingers grazing his chest, its jagged mouth curling in the green glow. The hiss pressed, his ear, his cheek, cold, alive. Caleb's light faltered, the dark rising, the figure's shadow, swallowing the edges as the blackout claimed its ground. Chapter 10. The Candles Betray. Caleb's kitchen was a crumbling fortress, 4 candles flickering on the counter, their flames gasping for life, wax spilling in chaotic rivers as the blackout's grip tightened. The camera's night vision screen trembled in his hands, its green glow a fragile thread to the figure stalking him. Couch, fridge, hallway. Each thump-thump a shudder through the floor. Each flash closer. Its tall, dark form sharp. Fingers, curling, void face forming with hollow eyes and a jagged curling mouth. The hiss swirled. His neck, his ears, his face. A cold, layered breath pressing in, louder than the rain's roar and thunder's rumble outside. "Get away!" Caleb shouted, voice raw, thrusting a candle forward. The flame sputtered, shadows, leaping. But the figure loomed by the sink, inches from him. Its arm raised, long fingers stretching toward his chest in the green glow. He swung the camera. Its head jerked, the hiss spiking, jagged mouth parting wider as it lunged closer. He dropped the screen. Darkness swallowed it, the candlelight too dim to reveal its shape. Up again. It flashed to the fridge, then the couch, its form towering, fingers grazing the air near his throat. The thump-thump pounded. Hallway, living room. A relentless spiral closing in. Caleb's hand shook, wax burning his skin. He panned. The figure darted. TV, window. Its hollow eyes glinting, mouth curling in a silent snarl. A candle flickered out. 3 left. The dark surging forward like a tide. "No!" he yelled, striking a match. 4 again, but the flames wavered, weaker, their glow shrinking fast. The hiss roared. Behind, beside, a chorus trapping him, cold and alive. He spun, candle high. The figure flashed. Couch, hallway. Its movements a blur, its jagged mouth wider, fingers brushing his arm in the green glow. The thump-thump overlapped. Kitchen, living room, too fast, too close. Camera up. It stood by the counter, inches away, its long fingers curling around the candle's flame, snuffing it out. 3 left again. The hiss pressed, his cheek, his ear, icy, insistent. Caleb's breath hitched, the light failing, the figure's shadow growing bolder as the dark claimed more ground. Chapter 11. The space shrinks. Caleb's apartment shrank under the blackout's weight, 3 candles flickering on the kitchen counter. There, flames dim, wax pooling in frantic streaks as the 4th lay snuffed out, a victim of the figure's grasp. The camera's night vision screen shook in his grip, its green tint revealing the relentless hunter. Couch, fridge, hallway, each thump-thump a jolt through the floor, each flash tighter, its tall form crisp, fingers sharp, void face glaring with hollow eyes and a jagged, twisting mouth. The hiss rolled, his neck, his ears, his face, a cold, layered breath circling him, drowning the rain's lash and thunder's growl outside. "Leave me alone," Caleb yelled, voice breaking, swinging a candle. The flame flared, shadows dancing, but the figure loomed by the sink, inches away, its arms stretching, long fingers curling toward his shoulder in the green glow. He panned the camera. Its head jerked, the hiss spiking, jagged mouth parting like a grin as it lunged closer. He dropped the screen. Darkness hit it, candlelight too weak to fight. Up again. It flashed to the fridge, then the couch, its fingers brushing his chest, cold and real in the green haze. The thump-thump hammered. Hallway, living room, a tightening trap. Caleb's chest heaved, sweat dripping. He panned, the figure darted. TV, window. Its hollow eyes locked on him, mouth curling wider. A candle sputtered. 2 left, the dark surging in like a wave. No! He gasped, relighting it. 3 again, but dimmer, their glow faltering. The hiss pressed, behind, beside, a chorus pinning him, icy and alive. He spun, candle high, the figure flashed, couch, hallway, its movements a blur, its jagged mouth gaping, fingers grazing his neck in the green glow. The thump-thump overlapped, kitchen, living room, too fast, too near. Camera up, it stood, by the counter, inches away, its long fingers snuffing another candle. 2 left, the dark swallowing half the room. The hiss roared, his ear, his cheek, cold, relentless. Caleb's knees buckled, the light crumbling, the figure's shadow towering as the blackout closed its jaws. Chapter 12. The Last Flame. Stan's Caleb's kitchen was a dying ember, 2 candles flickering on the counter, their flames gasping, wax dripping in desperate streams as the other 3 lay extinguished, lost to the dark. The camera's night vision screen trembled in his hands, its green glow a fading lifeline to the figure hunting him. Couch, fridge, hallway. Each thump-thump a quake through the floor, each flash bolder, its tall form towering, fingers sharp, as claws, void face glaring with hollow eyes and a jagged, sneering mouth. The hiss surged, his neck, his ears, his face, a cold, layered breath wrapping him, louder than the rain's howl and thunder's crash outside. "Stop!" Caleb yelled, voice hoarse, thrusting a candle. The flames sputtered, shadows leaping, but the figure loomed by the sink, inches away, its arm raised, long fingers curling toward his face in the green glow. He swung the camera. Its head jerked, the hiss roaring, jagged mouth gaping wide as it lunged closer. He dropped the screen. Darkness swallowed it, candlelight too frail to pierce. Up again. It flashed to the fridge, then the couch, its fingers brushing his shoulder, icy and solid in the green haze. The thump-thump pounded, hallway living room, a relentless noose tightening. Caleb's breath ragged, sweat stinging. He panned, the figure darted, TV, window, its hollow eyes glinting, mouth twisting in a silent laugh. A candle flickered out, 1 left, the dark flooding in like ink. "No!" he shouted, striking a match. Too damp, useless. The hiss pressed, behind, beside, a chorus crushing him, cold and alive. He spun, candle high, the figure flashed, couch, hallway, its movements a blur, its jagged mouth wide, fingers grazing his chest in the green glow. The thump-thump overlapped, kitchen, living room. Too fast, too close. Camera up. It stood by the counter, inches away, its long fingers curling around the last candle, its hollow eyes boring into him, mouth curling wider. The hiss roared, his ear, his cheek, icy, unstoppable. Caleb's lone flame wavered, the dark rising, the figure's shadow a wall as the blackout claimed its prize. Chapter 13. The Last Light. Falls. Caleb's kitchen was a shrinking island in a sea of shadow, the lone candle on the counter flickering, its flame a dying gasp, wax pooling in a frantic puddle as the other 4 lay snuffed out, lost to the blackout's relentless tide. The camera's night vision screen trembled in his grip, its green glow a desperate lifeline to the figure hunting him. couch, fridge, hallway. Each thump a shudder through the floor. Each flash tighter, its tall form towering. Long fingers, curling like claws. Void face glaring with hollow eyes and a jagged, sneering mouth. The hiss roared. His neck, his ears, his face. A cold, layered breath coiling around him, drowning the rain's howl and thunder's crash outside. "Get back!" Caleb yelled, voice cracking, thrusting the candle forward. The flames sputtered, shadows leaping wildly, but the figure loomed by the sink, inches away, its arm raised, fingers stretching toward his throat in the green glow. He swung the camera. Its head jerked, the hiss spiking, jagged mouth gaping wider as it lunged closer, its long fingers brushing his chest, cold and electric. He dropped the screen. Darkness swallowed it, the candlelight too frail to fight. Up again. It flashed to the fridge, then the couch, its hollow eyes glinting, mouth twisting in a silent snarl, fingers grazing his shoulder. The thump pounded. Hallway, living room, a relentless trap snapping shut. Caleb's breath ragged, sweat dripping. He panned. The figure darted. TV, window, its jagged mouth wide, fingers curling toward his face. The candle flickered, wax choking it. It dimmed, and the hiss surged, a chorus crushing him from all. Sides, icy and alive. "No!" he shouted, thrusting it higher. The flame flared, then shrank, the dark flooding in like ink. Camera up. It stood by the counter, inches away, its long fingers closing around the candle's base, snuffing it out with a hiss of smoke. One light gone, total blackout. The thump stopped. The hiss roared. His ear, his cheek, cold, unstoppable. Caleb stumbled back, camera shaking. The figure filled the green screen, its hollow eyes boring into him, jagged mouth curling wider, fingers brushing his neck, solid and real. The dark was absolute, the candle's loss a surrender, the figure's shadow claiming him as the blackout swallowed everything. Chapter 14. The Lens. Sees the end Caleb's apartment drowned in blackout, the last candle's death plunging him into a void. No light, no sound, but the rain's distant roar and thunder's fading growl outside. The camera hung from his neck, its night vision screen glowing green, his only tether to reality as he backed against the counter, heart hammering, hands empty. The hiss, cold, wet, layered, rolled around him. His neck, his ears, his face. A breath so close it chilled. His skin, the figure's presence, a weight he couldn't shake. The thump was gone, replaced by a stillness that screamed louder than footsteps ever could. "Stay away," Caleb yelled, voice echoing into the dark, swinging the camera up. The green tint flared, revealing the figure inches from him, its tall form filling the screen. Broad shoulders, long fingers sharp as claws, void face stark with hollow eyes, and a jagged, gaping mouth curling in a silent laugh. Its head tilted, hollow sockets glinting, fingers stretching toward his chest. Brushing his shirt, cold and solid. He stumbled, knocking the counter. Cans clattered, deafening in the silence. The hiss spiked, his ear, his cheek, layered breaths overlapping, a chorus pinning him. Camera shaking, he panned. It flashed. Couch, fridge, then back, right in, front, its jagged mouth wider, fingers curling around his arm, pulling faintly. "No!" he gasped, yanking free. The camera slipped, dangling, swinging wildly. The screen caught it, by the sink, then the couch, then inches away again, its hollow eyes locked on him, mouth parting like it spoke. He gripped the camera, raising it. The figure towered, its fingers brushing his face, icy and real, the hiss a roar in his ears. The screen flickered, static, then green, and the camera jolted, slipping from his hands, crashing to the floor with a thud. Caleb froze. Blind in the dark, the hiss everywhere, his neck, his face, cold, alive. The screen glowed up from below. The figure stood over it, filling the frame. hollow eyes staring straight into the lens, jagged mouth wide, fingers reaching down, brushing the glass. Caleb's breath stopped. The hiss swelled, the dark pulsed, and the camera's glow held steady, the figure's shadow looming as the blackout stretched on, its presence a promise left hanging in the night.